If you think you can handle what happened inside those frozen walls, then buckle up, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment telling me if you would have survived this nightmare, because what you're about to hear will chill you to the bone. February 14, 2023. Valentine's Day. While most of Minnesota was inside sharing warm meals and exchanging gifts, Coldwater Penitentiary sat like a concrete tomb against the endless white horizon. The maximum security prison, located 70 miles northwest of Minneapolis, housed over 2,000 of the state's most dangerous criminals. Murderers, gang leaders, arsonists, men whose names alone made seasoned cops nervous. But on this night, the real terror wasn't coming from the inmates. It was about to be unleashed on them. Officer Marcus Chen, 26 years old, barely 2 years into his corrections career, stood at his post in C Block, the prison's most violent section. The wind outside screamed like something alive, rattling the reinforced windows with fists of ice. The blizzard had started 3 hours earlier, and already the roads were impassable. Snow fell so thick that the watchtowers looked like ghosts dissolving into white static. Marcus checked his watch, 8:47 p.m. 13 minutes until his break. He never made it. The first gunshot cracked through the air like breaking bone. Marcus's head snapped toward the sound, down the corridor, past the rows of cells where inmates pressed their faces against the bars, suddenly alert, suddenly hungry for chaos. Another shot. Then another. Then the screaming started. Officer down. Officer down in D Block. Marcus's radio exploded with overlapping voices, panic bleeding through the static. He grabbed his baton, his hand shaking, and started running toward the commotion. His training told him to wait for backup. His instincts told him someone was dying. As he rounded the corner into the main corridor, he saw Officer Rebecca Torres on the ground, blood pooling beneath her shoulder, her face white as the snow outside. 3 inmates stood over her, and one of them, a man named Victor Mendez, serving life for a double homicide, held a 9mm pistol. Marcus froze. Guns weren't supposed to exist in Coldwater. The security was too tight, the searches too thorough. But there it was, smoking and real, pointed directly at Rebecca's head. "Get back," Mendez said, his voice calm, almost bored. "Or she dies right now." Behind Mendez, 2 other inmates moved with military precision, dragging Torres toward the cell block entrance. Marcus raised his hands, his mind racing. How did they get a gun? Where was backup? Why weren't the alarms louder, more urgent? Then he noticed something else. The security cameras. Every single one in this corridor had been spray-painted black. This wasn't a spontaneous riot. This was planned. "Control room, I need immediate assistance in D Block. Armed inmates, officer wounded." Marcus shouted into his radio. Only static answered. His stomach dropped. The control room managed all communication, all locks, all emergency protocols. If the control room was compromised, they were trapped. More gunshots erupted from somewhere deeper in the prison, toward the administrative wing. Marcus heard glass shattering, metal doors slamming, and beneath it all, a sound that made his blood turn to ice. Laughter. The inmates were laughing. Lockdown. Full lockdown. A voice finally crackled through the PA system, but it wasn't the warden's voice. It wasn't any voice Marcus recognized. "All personnel, shelter in place. The facility is now under inmate control." Under inmate control. The words didn't make sense. Coldwater had 300 guards, armed response teams, protocols designed for exactly this scenario. But as Marcus pressed himself against the cold concrete wall, watching Mendez and his crew disappear with Torres into the darkness, he understood something terrible. This wasn't just an escape attempt. This was a takeover. The lights went out. Emergency reds kicked in, bathing everything in hellish crimson. Marcus ran, his boots slipping on the polished floor, heading toward the nearest guard station. He had to find other officers, had to regroup, had to figure out what was happening. But when he reached Station 7, the door hung open, the interior trashed. Blood smeared the desk. The 2 guards who'd been stationed there were gone. His radio crackled once more. A different voice now, whispered and urgent. "Chin, if you're hearing this, get to the infirmary. 3rd floor, East Wing. Don't trust anyone in uniform. They're not all who they say they are. The transmission cut off. Marcus stood in the red emergency light, his heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. Outside, the blizzard raged, sealing them off from the world. Inside, something far worse had been set loose. And somewhere in this frozen labyrinth, people were hunting. But hunting for what? Or for whom? Marcus turned toward the stairwell leading to the infirmary, every instinct screaming at him to run the other way. But Rebecca Torres was still alive when they took her. Other officers might be too. He pushed open the stairwell door and started climbing into the darkness. Behind him, in the shadows of D Block, someone chambered another round. The sound echoed like a promise. This was only the beginning. Because when they finally opened the warden's safe 3 hours later, what they found inside wasn't money or contraband. It was a list. 23 names. All corrections officers. All marked for execution. And Marcus Chen's name was number 7. The list. Marcus climbed the stairs 2 at a time, his breath coming in sharp bursts that fogged in the frigid air. The heating system had failed, or been sabotaged, and the temperature inside Coldwater was dropping fast. By morning, hypothermia would kill as efficiently as any bullet. His hands were already numb, his fingers barely able to grip the metal railing as he ascended toward the 3rd floor. The infirmary. East Wing. Don't trust anyone in uniform. That last instruction haunted him more than the gunshots still echoing through the prison's maze of corridors. Marcus had worked alongside these officers for 2 years. He'd shared coffee with them, complained about overtime, celebrated birthdays. The idea that some of them might be part of this nightmare seemed impossible. But then again, so did armed inmates and a coordinated takeover. He reached the 3rd floor landing and paused, listening. Somewhere below, men were shouting, metal clanging against metal, the unmistakable sound of cells being forced open. They were releasing more inmates. Building an army. Marcus eased open the door and stepped into the corridor, his baton raised, useless against guns but better than nothing. The infirmary doors stood at the end of the hallway, 100 feet that might as well have been a mile. Marcus moved along the wall, staying low, trying to control his breathing. Halfway there, he heard voices. 2 men, arguing in harsh whispers just around the corner ahead. I don't care what Kozlov promised you. The plans changed. We're not waiting until midnight. If we move now, the state police will get suspicious. The storm's our cover, but only if we stick to the timeline. Marcus pressed himself into a doorway, his pulse thundering. He recognized one of those voices. Officer James Dietrich, a 15-year veteran, decorated for bravery during a riot in 2019. Marcus had looked up to him. And now Dietrich was talking about timelines and promises, about someone named Kozlov. Kozlov's probably dead already, Dietrich continued. Mendez doesn't leave witnesses. Once he has what he needs from the warden's office, he'll execute everyone who knows about the operation. Then we're dead too. Not if we get to the evidence room first. Destroy what's there, disappear in the chaos, and we're ghosts. Rich ghosts. Evidence room. Marcus's mind raced. What evidence? What operation? But before he could process it, the 2 men moved, their footsteps heading away from him, back toward the central hub. Marcus waited until silence returned, then sprinted the remaining distance to the infirmary. He burst through the doors and immediately 3 flashlights blinded him. Marcus threw up his hands, squinting against the glare. Don't shoot. Officer Chen, C block. The lights lowered. As his eyes adjusted, Marcus saw 5 people huddled in the infirmary. Nurse practitioner Sarah Kim, 2 inmates in orange jumpsuits with their hands zip-tied, and 2 corrections officers he recognized, Janet Torres, Rebecca's sister, and Miguel Santos, a rookie who'd started just 3 months ago. Chen, Janet said, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. Where's my sister? Mendez took her. D-Block. She was alive, but wounded. Marcus moved further into the room, noticing the makeshift barricade they'd built from medical carts and filing cabinets. What's happening? Who contacted me on the radio? Sarah Kim stepped forward, her scrubs stained with blood. That was me. I have a portable radio I keep for emergencies. Listen carefully, Because we don't have much time. This isn't a riot, Marcus. This is a cleanup operation. A cleanup? Sarah glanced at the two zip-tied inmates. One was older, maybe 50, with gray stubble and intelligent eyes. The other was younger, covered in gang tattoos. Tell him, Sarah said to the older man. Tell him what you told me. The older inmate, whose ID badge read Kozlov, Dmitry, spoke with a thick Russian accent. 6 months ago, I was moved to Coldwater from a federal facility. I am, or was, an accountant. I managed money for certain organizations that preferred their finances remain invisible. When I was arrested, I made a deal. Testimony for reduced sentence. But the people I worked for, they have long reach. Even into prisons. Marcus shook his head. I don't understand what this has to do with tonight. 4 corrections officers at Coldwater are on the payroll, Kozlov continued. They were paid to ensure I never make it to my testimony date, which is scheduled for next week. But they needed to make it look like chaos, like I died in a riot. So they armed certain inmates, promised them freedom, and orchestrated this massacre. Everyone dies, the evidence burns, and they walk away wealthy men. Miguel spoke up, his voice shaking. We found a list in the warden's office safe before the takeover started. 23 names. All corrections officers. All the ones who might have noticed something wrong, who asked too many questions, or who just happened to be on duty tonight. They're systematically hunting us down. Janet's hands clenched into fists. Rebecca's name was on that list. So is yours, Chen. So is everyone in this room. Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath him. Who are the 4 officers? We only know 2 for certain, Sarah said. James Dietrich and Alan Kroger. The other 2, we're not sure. But they're here, somewhere in this building, making sure no one survives who knows the truth. A sound from the hallway made them all freeze. Footsteps. Multiple sets, moving with purpose. Marcus killed his flashlight and the others followed suit, plunging the infirmary into darkness. Through the small window in the door, Marcus could see shadows moving, at least 6 figures approaching. East wing clear, a voice called out. It was Dietrich. Not yet. Infirmaries still locked. Might have survivors inside. Marcus's mind raced through options. The infirmary had one entrance, no windows large enough to escape through, and they were outnumbered. Janet moved beside him, pulling a scalpel from a nearby tray. Miguel grabbed a fire extinguisher. Sarah positioned herself in front of Kozlov, protective. We can't fight them, Marcus whispered. We need leverage. The younger inmate with the tattoos suddenly spoke, his voice urgent. There's a tunnel. Old service tunnel from the 1960s. Connects the infirmary to the maintenance building outside the main prison. Most people don't know about it, but I worked kitchen detail. I've seen the access door. Where? Marcus demanded. Supply closet. Back corner. Behind the shelving. The door handle rattled. Someone was trying keys. They had maybe 30 seconds. Marcus made a decision. Janet, Miguel with me. Sarah, keep Kozlov alive no matter what. He's the only one who can testify about who's really behind this. They moved as one, racing to the supply closet while behind them the door lock clicked open. Marcus tore at the shelving, throwing aside boxes of gauze and syringes until his hands found the outline of a door painted the same color as the wall. No handle. Just a small keyhole. I don't have a key. Marcus hissed. Janet stepped forward with the scalpel. Move. She jammed the blade into the lock mechanism and twisted with all her strength. Something snapped. The door swung inward, revealing a black tunnel that smelled of rust and decades-old air. Behind them, flashlight beams swept the infirmary. Then, everyone in. Marcus shoved them through, Kozlov stumbling, Sarah pulling him, the tattooed inmate diving through, then Miguel, then Janet. Marcus started to follow, then stopped. He could hear Dietrich's voice, closer now, almost at the supply closet. Marcus grabbed a bottle of rubbing alcohol and a lighter from his pocket. He soaked a pile of gauze, lit it, and threw it onto the supply shelves. Flames erupted instantly, spreading fast. Fire alarms began shrieking. In the confusion, Marcus dove into the tunnel and pulled the door shut behind him. They ran through absolute darkness, hands on walls, feet splashing through freezing water, the sound of their breathing mixing with distant shouts and alarms. After what felt like hours but was probably 5 minutes, they emerged into a small maintenance building, deserted and freezing cold. Through the window, the blizzard raged like the end of the world. Marcus pulled out his radio, praying it would work outside the main prison structure. Static, then a faint signal. "This is Officer Marcus Chen broadcasting emergency from Coldwater Penitentiary. Multiple officers down, armed takeover in progress, require immediate assistance." A voice crackled back, professional and calm. "Officer Chen, this is State Police Dispatch. We've been trying to reach Coldwater for 90 minutes. Roads are impassable. Earliest we can get SWAT to your location is 0600 hours. That's 8 hours from now. Can you confirm the nature of the emergency?" 8 hours. Marcus looked at the others, their faces pale in the dim emergency lighting. 8 hours before help arrived. 8 hours for Dietrich and his accomplices to kill everyone on that list, destroy the evidence, and disappear. 8 hours for Rebecca Torres to bleed out, if she wasn't already dead. "Confirmed," Marcus said into the radio. "Multiple homicides in progress. Corruption involving corrections staff. We have a witness in protective custody who can expose everything." He released the radio button and turned to Kozlov. "You said you kept records. Proof of who paid these officers, where the money came from. Where is it?" Kozlov's face was grim. "In my cell. Hidden. But to reach C-Block from here, we would have to go back inside. Back through hell." Outside, through the howling wind, Marcus could see Coldwater Penitentiary lit up like a burning red beacon against the white void. Somewhere inside that concrete fortress, his colleagues were being hunted. Rebecca Torres needed help. And the only way to survive until dawn was to go back in and find proof that would end this nightmare forever. But as Marcus stared at the prison, something else caught his eye. Movement on the roof. A figure, barely visible through the snow, setting up what looked like equipment. Some kind of antenna or transmitter. And beside it, a shape that made his blood run cold. A rocket launcher. Pointed not at the prison, but at the maintenance building where they stood. "Run!" Marcus screamed, grabbing Sarah and shoving her toward the exit. "They're going to..." The world exploded into fire and ice. Frozen truth. The rocket screamed through the blizzard and struck the maintenance building's east wall, detonating with a force that turned concrete into shrapnel and windows into a hurricane of glass. Marcus felt himself lifted off his feet, thrown backward through the emergency exit door he'd been desperately trying to reach. He hit the snow outside hard, the frozen ground punching the air from his lungs. His ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. He rolled onto his stomach, gasping, tasting blood and ash. Through the swirling white chaos, he could see the maintenance building engulfed in flames, orange and red defying the blizzard's attempt to smother them. Bodies lay scattered in the snow. Marcus crawled toward the nearest one, his vision swimming. It was Miguel Santos, the rookie. His eyes stared at nothing, a piece of metal embedded in his chest. "Sarah!" Marcus shouted, or tried to. His voice came out as a croak. "Janet!" A hand grabbed his shoulder. Marcus spun, ready to fight, and found himself staring at Kozlov. The Russian's face was covered in blood from a gash across his forehead, but his eyes were sharp, alert. He pointed toward two figures stumbling through the snow, away from the burning wreckage. Sarah Kim supporting Janet Torres, both alive. The tattooed inmate was gone. Probably vaporized in the initial blast. Marcus forced himself to his feet, every muscle screaming in protest. His jacket was smoking, and when he touched his face, his hand came away red. No time to assess injuries. No time for anything except survival. He staggered toward Sarah and Janet, Kozlov beside him, and together the four of them moved away from the flames, into the white oblivion of the storm. Behind them, Coldwater Penitentiary loomed like a monument to damnation. They'd blown up the maintenance building to kill the witnesses. Which meant Dietrich and his accomplices knew exactly where they'd escaped to. Which meant someone had been watching, tracking their every move. Marcus's radio was gone, lost in the explosion. They had no communication, no backup, and no shelter in a blizzard that would kill them as efficiently as any bullet if they stayed exposed. "We have to get back inside," Marcus said, his words nearly stolen by the wind. "It's the only structure for miles." "They'll be waiting," Janet said. Blood ran from a cut above her eye, freezing on her cheek. "They'll kill us the moment we step through those doors." "Then we don't go through the doors," Kozlov said. He was shivering violently, his thin prison uniform offering no protection against the cold. "There is a loading dock on the south side. Deliveries come Tuesday and Thursday. I watched from exercise yard. The entrance is lower security, fewer cameras. If we can reach it." "If," Sarah interrupted. "That's a quarter mile through a whiteout. We'll freeze before we make it." Marcus looked at each of them. Janet, whose sister was somewhere inside that building, bleeding or dead. Sarah, who'd risked everything to protect a witness. Kozlov, whose testimony could bring down a criminal empire. And Miguel, lying dead in the snow because he'd been on duty during the wrong shift. "We split up," Marcus said. "Two of us create a distraction at the main entrance. The other two get Kozlov to the loading dock and inside. Find his cell, get the evidence, and hide until SWAT arrives at 6 a.m. "That's a suicide mission for whoever goes to the main entrance," Janet said flatly. "I know." Marcus met her eyes. "I'll do it. I need someone with me who knows how to shoot if we get our hands on weapons." Janet's jaw tightened. "Rebecca taught me everything she knows. Let's go." Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. "If you die, this was all for nothing. That evidence means nothing without someone alive to deliver it." "Then don't let us die for nothing," Marcus said. "Get Kozlov to C Block. Cell 217. He says the evidence is hidden in a Bible, hollowed out, under his bunk. Get it, find somewhere safe, and stay alive until dawn. That's the mission." They separated in the howling white void, Marcus and Janet heading toward the front of the prison while Sarah and Kozlov disappeared into the storm, moving toward the south loading dock. The snow was so thick Marcus could barely see 3 feet ahead. His hands had gone completely numb, his face burning with cold. Frostbite was setting in. They had maybe 20 minutes of exposure left before their bodies started shutting down. The main entrance appeared like a ghost through the blizzard, the reinforced doors still intact, emergency lights casting red pools on the accumulated snow. Marcus and Janet crouched behind an overturned delivery truck, assessing. 2 armed inmates stood guard outside, shivering but alert, assault rifles in their hands. Not prison issue. These weapons had been smuggled in specifically for tonight. "How do we get past them without guns?" Janet whispered. Marcus scanned the area. His eyes landed on the truck's fuel tank. "We don't get past them. We bring them to us." He found a rock beneath the snow, hefted it, and smashed the truck's rear window. The alarm started wailing, painfully loud in the storm. The 2 guards immediately turned toward the sound, raising their weapons. Marcus and Janet pressed themselves against the truck's far side, hidden. The guards approached cautiously, separating, one moving around each side of the vehicle. The first guard rounded the corner where Janet waited. She'd found a tire iron in the snow. She swung it with all her strength, connecting with the man's knee. He went down screaming, and Janet grabbed his rifle before he could recover, smashing the stock into his face. He stopped moving. The second guard heard the commotion and came running. Marcus stepped out and tackled him, both of them crashing into the snow. They grappled, the rifle between them, neither able to gain advantage. The guard was bigger, stronger, and slowly he began forcing the weapon toward Marcus's face. Marcus could see his eyes through the falling snow, wild with adrenaline and something else. Fear. This guard was terrified. "Please," the man gasped. "I didn't want this. Dietrich said it would be quick, in and out, no one else had to die. I have kids, man. I needed the money." Janet appeared behind him and pressed the barrel of her acquired rifle against the back of his head. "Drop it." The guard released the weapon. Marcus took it, his frozen fingers barely able to grip the trigger. "How many officers are part of this?" "For Dietrich, Kroger, Simmons, and me. That's all I swear. The rest are dead or locked up. Mendez's crew has the whole facility. We just wanted the evidence destroyed. We were supposed to be gone by now, but Kozlov escaped and… Where's Rebecca Torres? Janet demanded, her voice like shattered glass. The guard's face crumpled. Medical wing. Second floor. Mendez is keeping the wounded guards alive as hostages in case the state police arrive early. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Janet looked at Marcus. He could see the decision forming in her eyes, the choice between mission and family. Go, Marcus said. Get your sister. I'll find Kozlov and Sarah. You can't do this alone. I'm not asking permission. Marcus stood, keeping the rifle trained on the guard. Take this one's weapon and his radio. Get to Rebecca, get any other survivors, and barricade yourselves somewhere defensible. When SWAT arrives, you guide them in. Janet hesitated only a moment, then nodded. She grabbed the unconscious guard's rifle and radio, then looked at the conscious one. You're coming with me. If you want any chance of living through this night, you help me save my sister. They disappeared into the storm, leaving Marcus alone with the wailing truck alarm and the knowledge that he was about to walk into hell with nothing but a stolen rifle and rapidly failing body heat. He moved toward the main entrance, using the truck alarm as cover, and slipped inside through a side maintenance door the guards had left unsecured. The interior of Coldwater was chaos incarnate. Emergency lighting flickered. Fires burned in several sections, filling the air with smoke. Inmates ran wild through the corridors, some fighting each other, others just reveling in the destruction. And somewhere in this madness, Dietrich and his remaining accomplices were hunting for Kozlov. Marcus made his way through the shadows, avoiding the main corridors, using service passages he'd learned during his 2 years on the job. He reached C Block 15 minutes later and found it relatively quiet. Most inmates here were still locked in their cells, banging on the bars, shouting for release. Cell 217 was on the second tier. He climbed the metal stairs, his boots echoing despite his efforts at stealth. Kozlov's cell was ransacked, the mattress shredded, personal effects scattered. Someone had been here first. Marcus tore through the debris, searching frantically. No Bible. No evidence. Nothing. A slow clap echoed through the cell block. Marcus spun, raising his rifle, and found James Dietrich standing at the tier entrance, alone, holding a Bible in one hand and a pistol in the other. Looking for this? It's over, Dietrich. State police know everything. SWAT will be here in hours. Hours is plenty of time. Dietrich smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Those eyes looked haunted, desperate. You think I wanted this? I've given 15 years to this job, Marcus. 15 years of getting spit on, assaulted, threatened. My daughter needs surgery we can't afford. My wife works 3 jobs. And these animals we guard? They live better than my family. So when someone offered me a way out, a way to finally breathe, I took it. You murdered innocent people. I eliminated complications. Dietrich raised the Bible. This little book contains bank accounts, wire transfers, names of everyone involved in the organization Kozlov worked for. His insurance policy. But it's also evidence that implicates me. So I'm going to burn it, and then I'm going to burn you, and by the time SWAT arrives, this will just be another tragic prison riot. Marcus kept his rifle trained on Dietrich's chest. Where's Kozlov? Your nurse friend and the Russian accountant never made it to the loading dock. Kroger intercepted them. They're in the warden's office, 3rd floor. I'm heading there next to finish this. You'll have to go through me. I was hoping you'd say that. Dietrich raised his pistol, but Marcus was already moving, diving behind a cell barrier as the shot rang out. He returned fire, the assault rifle's report deafening in the enclosed space. Dietrich took cover behind a support pillar. They exchanged fire for 30 seconds that felt like hours, bullets ricocheting off metal, shattering concrete. Marcus's magazine ran empty. He dropped behind cover to reload, and in that moment, Dietrich rushed him. The older officer was faster than Marcus expected, crossing the distance in seconds, tackling Marcus before he could chamber a new round. They crashed to the metal floor, the rifle skittering away. Dietrich was stronger, more experienced, and he had the advantage of position, pressing his pistol toward Marcus's face. Marcus grabbed Dietrich's wrist with both hands, straining, but he was exhausted, injured, and freezing. His strength was failing. "I'm sorry, kid," Dietrich said, and he sounded like he meant it. "You're a good officer. But you chose the wrong side." A gunshot cracked through the air. Dietrich jerked, his eyes widening in shock. He looked down at the red stains spreading across his chest, then toppled sideways. Behind him stood Officer Rebecca Torres, pale as death, her shoulder wrapped in blood-soaked bandages, holding a pistol in a shaking hand. Janet supported her from behind. "That's my partner you're apologizing to," Rebecca said, then collapsed. Janet caught her, lowering her gently to the floor. Marcus scrambled over, pressing his hands against Rebecca's wounds. She'd lost too much blood. Without immediate medical attention, she wouldn't make it to dawn. "The evidence," Rebecca whispered. "Did you get it?" Marcus looked at Dietrich's body, at the Bible lying a few feet away, at Janet's tear-streaked face. "We're getting it now. And we're getting you out of here." But even as he said it, new sounds echoed through the prison. Explosions. Gunfire. Screaming. And beneath it all, the distinctive thump of helicopter rotors cutting through the storm. Marcus's radio, which Janet had brought, crackled to life. "All units, this is SWAT Commander Phillips. We are inbound to Coldwater Penitentiary, ETA 5 minutes. Heavy resistance expected. All surviving corrections staff, identify your positions and shelter in place." 5 minutes. They just had to survive 5 more minutes. Marcus grabbed the Bible from Dietrich's dead hands and shoved it inside his jacket. "Can you move?" he asked Rebecca. She nodded weakly. "For Becca?" "Always." Together, the three of them made their way through the chaos toward the administrative wing, following the path Marcus hoped would lead to Sarah and Kozlov. They found them in the warden's office, barricaded behind an overturned desk, with Officer Kroger lying dead near the door, a scalpel protruding from his neck. Sarah's hands were covered in blood. She looked at Marcus with hollow eyes. "He was going to kill us," she said simply. "I didn't have a choice." "You made the right one." Marcus helped them to their feet. "SWAT's almost here. We need to get somewhere visible, somewhere they can extract us from." They made it to the main administrative lobby as the first SWAT officers breached the entrance, moving in tactical formation, cutting through the resistance with professional precision. The firefight lasted another 10 minutes, then it was over. The inmates who'd been armed surrendered or died. The fires were contained. And as dawn broke over Minnesota, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold, Marcus Chen stood in that lobby, surrounded by survivors, holding a Bible that would bring down a criminal empire. The final death toll was staggering. 18 corrections officers murdered. 23 inmates killed in the chaos. 37 wounded. And Officer David Simmons, the fourth corrupt officer, found dead in the evidence room, apparently killed by Mendez once he'd outlived his usefulness. Victor Mendez himself was captured trying to escape through the storm. He never made it past the prison walls. The investigation that followed unraveled everything. The Bible contained not just Kozlov's records, but Dietrich's notes, Kroger's communications, bank statements showing payments from a Russian organized crime syndicate with reach into 6 countries. 17 more people were arrested in the following months. Kozlov testified and entered witness protection. The 4 officers involved were exposed as having been recruited over years, slowly corrupted by promises of wealth until they were too deep to escape. Rebecca Torres survived her injuries after 3 surgeries and eventually returned to work, though she transferred to a different facility. Sarah Kim quit corrections altogether and now works at a private hospital, but she still has nightmares. Janet Torres became an advocate for corrections reform, fighting to improve conditions and pay for officers so desperation doesn't breed corruption. And Marcus Chen? He stayed at Coldwater after it reopened 6 months later, because someone had to remember. Someone had to stand watch and make sure it never happened again. But on quiet nights, when the wind howls like it did during the blizzard, he still hears the gunshots. Still sees Miguel's dead eyes. Still feels the cold that nearly killed them all. The warden's office was completely renovated, but they kept one thing the same. On the wall, in a frame, hangs a list of 23 names. The officers who were marked for death that night. Below it, a plaque reads, "In memory of those who stood watch, February 14, 2023. The Minnesota ICE shooting. Never forgotten." Because sometimes the real monsters aren't behind bars. Sometimes they're standing right beside you, wearing the same uniform, making the same oath. And the only thing separating justice from massacre is the choice people make when the lights go out and no one's watching. Marcus made his choice that frozen night. 18 people died because others made a different one. The Minnesota ICE shooting became a case study in institutional corruption, in the desperation that drives good people to terrible acts, and in the courage it takes to stand against impossible odds. The recordings from that night, the evidence from Kozlov's Bible, and testimony from survivors sent shockwaves through the corrections system nationwide. Reforms were implemented. Oversight increased. Pay was raised. But Marcus knows the truth that keeps him awake some nights. It could happen again, anywhere, anytime someone decides their needs outweigh their oath. 3 months after Coldwater reopened, Marcus received a letter. No return address, postmarked from somewhere in the Midwest. Inside was a single sentence in Kozlov's handwriting, "Thank you for choosing the harder path." Marcus pinned it to his locker, a reminder that sometimes survival isn't enough. Sometimes you have to survive for the right reasons, or all the blood and suffering means nothing. The blizzard that night killed 6 people across Minnesota, stranded thousands, and shut down the state for 3 days. But inside Coldwater Penitentiary, during those dark hours of February 14th, it covered a massacre orchestrated by men who thought they could get away with murder. They were wrong. Because of one young officer who refused to stop fighting, one nurse who protected her patient, one sister who saved her twin, and one accountant who chose to testify despite knowing it might cost him everything. They survived the Minnesota ICE shooting. But none of them escaped it. Some scars run too deep. Some cold never really goes away. And some nights, when the wind screams and the snow falls heavy, Marcus Chen stands at his window and remembers that hell isn't always below. Sometimes it's just behind the next locked door, waiting for someone to make the choice between easy money and hard justice. He made his choice. And 23 families got to bury their loved ones with honor instead of shame. In the end, that has to be enough.